Welcome, everybody. It's about that time. Rostermania is upon us for Rlcs Season 9. We are about a week out until the Rlcs season kicks off, and we finally basically got all the announcement rosters out of the way in terms of this recording, but there's still one lingering, but we kind of know where he's going, very likely, or who's joining that team. But we're going to talk about the NA and Europe rosters, how they came about, and yeah, it's pretty simple. Let's just get into it. We're going to rank these roster moves in the next video. So if you guys want to guess 1 through 8, how these roster moves, how we think it's going to happen. Last season we did roster grades, but I do feel like a lot of these teams are so incredibly close, or like a lot of these roster moves are incredibly close, that a lot of them, like in terms of a grading scale, would probably get very close or the same grades. So instead we'll rank them 1 through 8 to make it a little bit more interesting. But for this video, we're just going to talk about how these rosters came about. So let's get into it. North America. Now, we talked about 2020, how I'm going to be fancier, and we're going to have animations once again on my sweet PowerPoint slides. So, 2020, the year of Gibbs video content. Here we go. Same rosters. We have Energy, the world champs. Not too much has to be said here. There's no surprise that they are staying together. Then followed up by Space Station Game. And I think, you know, there's probably a 90% chance that they were staying together. Like, maybe the only thing I could have seen is if, like, someone went to, like, Pittsburgh Knights or, like, AXB got replaced by someone on Pittsburgh Knights. Like, if those two rosters wanted to do a swap, I could have seen maybe Space Station change it. But they have a lot of good momentum going into the season. So we'll see. Space Station Game is staying the same. E-Unite is my first team where I'm a little bit questionable here. Hoxer was rumored to be going to Cloud9. It didn't work out. I think supposedly, speculation, rumors, that Hoxer got blocked by E-United because they wanted to keep him, so they couldn't make that roster move. I think the only other way they could have done something is maybe getting rid of like a Roldiz and trying to upgrade there. They obviously did finish top 4 in North America, but I think it was a little bit of a surprise. And I don't think if you asked a lot of people today, who's your top 4 in NA? I think most people would not have E-United up there. So a little bit surprising that they didn't make a roster move, but we'll see how it works out. Cloud9 is one of those teams where a lot of people thought Torment was going to go, but the show goes on for Torment. Cloud9 speculation, I don't know any insider information. I assume they tried out Mist and Hoxer at the very least, if not more players. Looked like they wanted Hoxer from what the pros were saying, but it didn't work out. So Cloud9 remains the same. Now, this isn't incredibly surprising to me for Cloud9 or G2, but for Cloud9 especially, like everyone talks about, wow, Cloud9, terrible season. And to be frank, it was. It was a really bad season. But when you look at 2019 as a whole, like this team is still a very talented team. You look at average placement in like every event, they're the 4th best team in the world. Cloud9 is still a force. Like, sure, it was a down year for them, but that's because Cloud9, their normal years are top 2. In the average finish because they finished top 4 at everything. So we'll see if Cloud9 bounce back. Same with G2 Esports. They were obviously 1 win away or 1 match away from winning the World Championship back in Season 7. We'll see what G2 Esports does this season. They kept saying all along that they were going to stay together, and it looks like that was the case. I think the only way they wouldn't have is maybe if they get rid of Rizzo, because I think they had a lot of issues trying to figure out where Rizzo is supposed to be and stuff the season prior. But G2 Esports, I think, is very similar to Cloud9. Like, say there was an international LAN this offseason, I think Cloud9 and G2 probably answer a lot of questions there and have at least relatively good placements. But I'm very excited that we had a short offseason, holiday break, and all that we didn't see Cloud9 and G2 play in anything major. Because now we get to see them go into league play and have to answer the questions there. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how they fare. But Cloud9 G2, I think will definitely be a force to be reckoned with for a World Championship spot. I think they'll be right in the mix again. At least like top 6, probably. Unless one completely collapses. But we'll see. Last up, Afterthought, one of the 2 rival series teams. They remain the same compared to the other one. And I always say when a rival series team, when they make it to RLCS, my heart says don't change your roster move. My brain says change your roster because obviously, you know, you're just coming in and usually the other teams are better than you. Now, that hasn't been the case lately where a lot of rival series talent has been, you know, pushing up into the top 4, making World Championship runs. Like, look at Space Station. Look at Pittsburgh Knights. Look at Veloce. But the problem with Afterthought and Flight coming in, or the old RBG roster, is neither of these teams in this specific season, because of the expansion, beat RLCS teams to get here. So they still got to prove their worth. And I think Afterthought, we'll see how it goes. It's Shock, Sathu, and Dapper. So I think everyone's excited to see Dapper back into the RLCS. But I don't have incredibly high hopes for this team, but it's going to be some juicy games. Like, I want to see Dapper try and bounce back, like try and battle back versus all the haters, because he's been talking up a big game a lot on Reddit over the past couple of years, where like it wasn't his fault necessarily, his bad seasons in the RLCS. It was more of a team dynamic, and now he has a chance to prove it. Sathu, obviously, after getting kicked from Space Station, he gets to bounce back and see how that all works out too, and Shock as well after the whole birds and the bees thing. Or the Afterthought thing, whatever you want to call it. We'll see how he does in the RLCS as well, but it'll be exciting to see how they do. Moving on, though, let's go over the roster moves that did happen. So 6 teams remain the same. 4 teams have changed players, and I think probably the most surprising, AJ to Pittsburgh Knights. Pittsburgh Knights was one of those teams bringing in that new meta with all 3 players, bringing in this new level of chemistry, I felt like, on this team. They executed so well. And my favorite stat from the entire RLCS Season 8 was there's only been 4 teams ever that have had the highest save percentage and the highest shooting percentage in the same season, and those were some of the greatest teams of all time. Season 6, Cloud9 and Dignitas. Season 7, Energy and Vitality. So Season 8, Pittsburgh Knights was on that list. They executed so well together with one another that it's a little surprising. There was some drama going on there, but not too much. They basically laid it all out in a Twit Longer by Moopy, where Miss basically approached them, was like, hey, I'm going to try out for different teams. And my likely speculation was he was trying out for Cloud9, because I don't think there's many other teams you would try out for that you would go to over Pittsburgh Knights. I would think like Cloud9, maybe Space Station, maybe G2. But it seemed a little bit questionable because Pittsburgh Knights were generally the number 2 team in North America throughout the season. But you could go either way with Space Station and Pittsburgh Knights in that argument. So it looked like Mist lost out on those roster moves, and Pittsburgh Knights were basically like, all right, if you want to try out for different teams, then we're going to try out new thirds. And if neither of us are happy with the opposite stuff, then we'll come back together and build a team. Well, Mist, it looked like he didn't win any of those tryouts, and he wasn't going to be on any of those teams. While Pittsburgh Knights were like, hey, we got AJ, and he's doing really well with us. So they went with AJ, and Mist kind of gets relegated down, I would say, just a little bit to Ghost compared to probably the teams that he wanted to play for, in my personal opinion. Then there was even more drama there, where Memory drops Ghost, and I think that's a little bit of a questionable move. I think Memory was a good backbone for that team. But that all being said, they had First Killer. They announced First Killer on this squad. Then literally 2 hours before roster lock, First Killer removes everything Ghost related on his Twitter. And everyone's like, what's going on? And then they announced that Mist goes to Ghost. First Killer gets transferred to Rogue. So he replaces AJ on that squad. And Memory, who was booted from Ghost, which I think, once again, maybe a little bit questionable, he goes to Flight, which is the old RBG roster. And I think with RBG, they booted Aeon incredibly quickly throughout the offseason and got a lot of flack for it because, again, a lot of people don't like when rival series teams that just get promoted try and kick one of their players. But all these pros weighing in saying Aeon's a god and all this stuff. Well, I don't see Aeon on any of these RLCS teams. So they couldn't have thought that highly of him. So Memory goes to Flight. Like, I think Memory basically just lost the tryout sweepstakes amongst all of these players because I think that was the last spot you would want to join is RBG. But that's where he is, and we'll see how they do. And then we talked about it already, First Killer to Rogue. He just became eligible this season, so he is the new player gained for the RLCS that didn't earn his spot, and the only player that we lost this season was Aeon, where he was kicked from Flight just a couple weeks after they qualified. And that is your North America roster. It was a little bit juicy here or there. We'll rate these guys a little bit later. We'll have league play predictions and all that stuff all next week, but that's how it went down in North America. Let's move on to European side again. Animations. Look at this. Beautiful. Same rosters. Dignitas. I think they were A very interesting team, very similar to Reciprocity, just complete opposite, where miserable season for a while for Yukio. Picks it up towards the end, week 5 in playoffs. They make it to the World Championship. Then has the tournament of his life. Yukio popped off, played amazing. I think really earned his spot back on the Dignitas roster. I think if World Championship didn't happen, a lot of people would be calling for his head. But then Yukio went Super Saiyan, and that was the end of that. Reciprocity, kind of the opposite. Number 1 team in Europe, swept Vitality. Swept them in the finals to get number 1 seed. Then became the first ever number 1 European seed to not finish top 3. They got bounced out on day number 2. Didn't make day number 3. But when you talk about loyalty, out of all teams in Rocket League, I would say Reciprocity always been super loyal. Like, I think the only moves that could have happened was maybe Shawset gets picked up by someone. Maybe. Like, you could have seen a Vitality a situation there with Alpha and all that stuff. Maybe that could have been Shawset. Who knows? Maybe Dignitas picks up Shawset, but that's unlikely because Shawset and Mind Panda used to play together. Then they had like kind of a bad falling out. So extremely loyal. On the opposite side, I think the only player that you could have replaced on that team probably been Fruity, because Farrah's like that in-game leader, that captain, basically their coach. Sorry, Yummy, but that's fair. So you would think maybe Fruity, but it's like, who do you upgrade Fruity from? So it's like, they're kind of in this weird spot where I think probably the only realistic thing was Shawset getting some offer from some other team. But it didn't happen, or maybe he turned him down or was never questioned leaving the team. So Reciprocity will go for it again as the same squad. They had a pretty good season. Where they won a DreamHack. They finished into the Grand Finals RL Summit, but at the World Championships didn't do too hot. So we'll see how they do going into 2020. Veloce, very similar to E United for me, where they kind of, sure, they finished top 2 in league play, but like barely. And a lot of it was like weird mistakes by teams or just bad plays by teams that Veloce just capitalized on. Then when they went to the World Championship, they had an easier side of the bracket, I would say. They were clearly the last place team of day 3, where they got dominated by Space Station. It kind of showed when they played Renegades that series was a little bit iffy, I would say. A little surprising that they don't make a roster move here, just because, again, like, I think at least the public probably doesn't think very highly of Veloce. But they obviously do. They are a consistent team, and they get the job done. And we'll see if that pays off for another season. But they just didn't wow me like all season last year. But who knows? Because I was guessing all year long with Veloce. 1-6 in league play. It was awful. Like, I couldn't even guess when they would win. It was tough. When they lost to TSM, I don't know what's going on. But Veloce, no roster moves there. Maybe a little bit questionable. Then we got the 3 rival series teams coming in. Monaco, Endpoint, and Singularity. No roster moves there. Once again, we talk about how, like, maybe they should have made moves, maybe not, thinking with your heart. But we'll see how these teams do, because honestly, most of the roster moves that happened in Europe came from the team that isn't back in the Rlcs, like 2 of those moves at least. So maybe there just wasn't a lot of talent going around, and they felt like, they have good chemistry on all 3 of these teams. I think Monaco probably has the slightest edge out of these 3 teams to surprise, then Endpoint, and then, of course, Singularity. But they're the only ones that beat an RLCS team to get here. So we'll see how it all plays out for those guys. But big question marks there in Europe. Like, I think Europe is a top 4 fight between 4 teams. And then if one of them falls out, it leaves the other door wide open for other teams. And if you want to guess my top 4, it's not that hard. All right. Alpha, 54, 2 Vitality, new roster moves. Huge blockbuster move here where they kick Scrub. Vitality kick Scrub. In my opinion, the best player on Vitality to pick up Alpha for better comms, maybe for the Olympics, because now it's a full French team. So we'll see how that all plays out for them. They should be a strong favorite to win the Olympics with this roster, as long as it all plays out well. Now, Alpha 54, for me, is one of those players where 2 seasons in a row, I talked about he was my Rookie of the Year in 2019, and a lot of people were kind of questioning that you should only count 1 RLCS season. You shouldn't count the whole year for some of these players. He still would have won it. His first season, he won MVP anyway. He was clearly the best player on Barca back in the first season, and then he goes to TSM and tries to hard carry, and it doesn't work out. Now, some people might question, does he try and hard carry too much? But I think it's just because of what was surrounded by him. The talent surrounded by him is nowhere near the same as what it's going to be now. Fairy Peak and K-Dot, anyone's going to get better from those two, and we'll just see. Like, if Alpha continues to be selfish, it could be a major problem for Vitality, but I think Alpha could easily be best player in the world by the end of this year because of his teammates and because of what he's already shown with weaker teammates on his team. The other move, Magnus to TSM, and everyone's going to praise this roster move. Complexity, the old Complexity is coming back. This is fantastic. Magnus and Metanoris, they're coming back together. They're reunited after the worst roster move in RLCS history. Yada, yada, yada. Fireworks, parade. But hey, guys, I'm sorry, but these guys are old. These guys seem like the old era trying to be phased out. Magnus, Metanoris, and Remco. Let's not forget that the old Complexity roster are a very defensive team because of Magnus and Metanoris. And a lot was the offensive player on that squad. Say that happens again, which, who knows. It probably won't. But Magnus and Metanoris are playing defense. What, is Remco going to play offense? That is not a team that I would be very hyped for, personally. Now, obviously, Metanoris has shown some sparks here or there. Magnus just came off a terrible season in the RLCS, probably his worst ever. We'll see how this move plays out. I think it's the old guard trying to battle versus all these new faces, and we'll see. The Brotherhood is there, but I don't know if that's enough. Moving on, Scrub to Mouse. Not official yet, but there's only one spot left for Scrub to go. He's been having Mouse avatars and stuff on his streams. You think it's Mouse, it's probably Mouse. So Scrub to Mouse. I think there was some speculation for a little while between Mouse and Barca, but Scrub to Mouse is very likely. Not official as the time of this recording, but we're going to assume it is. Whoever picked up Scrub was going to be a fantastic move, and I bet you Scrub probably had the choice of where he wanted to go between Mouse and Barca. He probably chose Mouse over Barca, and I would agree with him. So this team should be pretty dominant. We'll see how they do. So I think in that top four conversation, Mouse has just elevated themselves into one of those world championship spots, and then it just comes down to, will it work? And very likely, I think it will. Flakes to Barca. Flakes, again, coming off a miserable season with Complexity, but he had some highlights here and there. A lot of people consider him to be the best player from that miserable team, but does that even matter? I don't know. Flakes to Barca. The main problem with the Barca move is the player that they replaced, and that is Bluey. Bluey is off of Barca, and that's the major question move. When Bluey was really carrying hard, we don't know exactly what went down there, but Bluey being kicked seems like the last player that I would kick in terms of on-field performance, but it is what it is. So Bluey's kicked there. And then players gained, Magnus and Flakes, which seems very, very strange when considering this is one of the worst seasons by a European team ever with the old Complexity. Magnus and Flakes, though, they somehow survive and will play into the RLCS. And then it's also very confusing on the other side. A lot. 2 seasons in a row, he was in that players gained list where he got relegated to the rival series, but somehow made it onto another roster and was still playing. And now he's kicked from Mouse. The one season when he qualifies for RLCS by himself. And Bluey, the European MVP, he won't be in the RLCS either. He'll be in the rival series as well. He's playing on Triple Trouble with who? Let me make sure I get all the names right. I believe it is Rix, Ronde, and Tadpole. And probably one of the favorites to win the rival series. And then a lot is playing on the boys. Let's go over to them. They are not in the rival series. They have to qualify. And that is with Burrito B and Calix. So the ABC team. So we'll see how they do there. But I think the European roster moves are a little bit more questionable across the board, probably. Because, again, 2 players coming from one of the worst seasons in European history. And then one team probably kicking their best player. It's obviously a big argument where you could say either way. And then, we'll see how this all plays out. It's going to be interesting for Europe. Once again, I think, we have a top 4 that we think is going to be there for the World Championship. I think it's pretty easy to assume Mouse, Vitality, Dignitas, and Reciprocity in some order. And it just comes down to, does one of these teams fall apart? And then who comes up and takes their spot? It could be Veloce again. They keep games close. They win game 5s. They win when it matters. It could be one of these new rival series teams. Who knows? It could be the team with the average age of 45, TSM. Who knows? Who knows? It could be any of these guys. So we'll see how it all plays out. It should be a really fun season. And again, we'll rank the roster moves in a future video. But thank you guys for watching. That'll be it for me. See you later. Bye.